All right. Well, I wanted to welcome you to the Music is a Total Brain Workout, part of our Amazing Brain series. This is the third of the three presentations we've had. Really looking forward to this one. Who doesn't like music, right? This is with Stephanie Ramirez. She is one of our speech therapists here at North Kansas City Hospital. She is the brain guru. I always love hearing her talk, I always learn something. So I'm going to turn over the reins to Miss Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I am also very excited about this talk. It's two areas of passion of mine, and so I'm really excited to have everyone joining us and talking about how music can be a total brain workout. So let's jump right in. So just a little about me. I am the lead speech language pathologist here at North Kansas City Hospital. I've been practicing for about 13 years now. In 2021, I founded the North Kansas City Hospital Brain Injury Support Group. And that, is kind of the culmination of my fascination with the brain and just wanting to have as much community education and outreach as we possibly can. I'm also a community educator with the Alzheimer's Association and have been doing talks like this for many years now. So I just love sharing information. Going back into my personal life, I also am a musician. So I started taking piano lessons when I was about 7 years old. And then later on, I learned how to play the clarinet. And then I switched over in middle school to the trombone because I really wanted to do jazz band. And that was just a huge journey for me. I wound up getting to go to All State, the National Honor Band. I toured around Europe as a high school student. And then as an adult, I've been involved in several community bands. So it's really a passion that has been a big part of my life. So for today, I want to first do a little anatomy lesson and kind of talk about the parts of the brain and how those parts of the brain can be impacted by music, and really how music can enrich our brains all across our life. We utilize music a lot of times in therapy, and I want to hopefully leave you with some ideas on how to incorporate music into your life so that you can help build better brain health. So just to start, I've got a few of my favorite quotes about music here. Music imprints itself on the brain deeper than any other human experience. Music evokes emotion, and emotion can bring with it memory. I just love that. Music is medicine of the mind. I feel like that, anytime you're having a bad day, just put on your favorite song and somehow it just doesn't feel so bad. Music boosts dopamine, lowers cortisol, and makes you feel great. Your brain is better on music. And I hope that when you leave, this presentation today, that you will see that that is the case. So just a general overview of the brain. So our brain is composed of different lobes and regions. Each of them are responsible for different functions in the body. And so today, what I'm going to do is talk about each of the main lobes and how they are impacted by music. So the red lobe there in the front is the frontal lobe, and that's located just behind your forehead. This is kind of the CEO of your brain. So all of the higher level thinking, decision making, planning, organizing, problem solving, multitasking, initiation, all of that comes from your frontal lobe. Our frontal lobe also controls our personality, our temperament, emotions, mood, and the speech areas of your brain are also located in that frontal lobe. So with music, we can use this part of the brain to help express music. And scans show that music may help this part of the brain work better and to help make us better communicators. So very important part of the brain and definitely impacted by music. Our temporal lobes are located just above the ears, and these are important for memory, hearing, processing what we hear, understanding speech, and that is both written and spoken. So with music, we can use this part of the brain to analyze and enjoy music, reading the music. Language and words are interpreted on the left side of the brain, while the sounds are interpreted on the right side. So when I said music is a total brain experience, we really are looking at both the left and the right hemispheres. The parietal lobe is located just behind the ears towards the back of the head, and that's that yellow piece. And that is important for spatial judgment, integrating sensory information, reading, writing, and drawing. So with music, this lobe really helps to translate that cognitive, perceptual use of music. So for example, if you're learning a musical instrument or learning a song, you might be activating this piece of the brain to help with the sequences of the pitches and the rhythms. And then those sensory centers will give you that tactile feedback when you are actually playing that instrument or dancing. So this definitely can be activated with music. Occipital lobe is in the back of the head, and that is important for vision, object recognition, and identifying color. And with music, it is involved obviously with reading music or even looking at your own dance moves or appreciating the dance moves of others. I don't know if anyone has heard about kind of how certain musicians can actually visualize sound and they might see sound as a color. I think that's just fascinating. I unfortunately am not one of those people, but I think musicians definitely visualize music differently. And you might visualize a musical score while you're playing, so you don't have to be looking at the notes to be able to play the song. You can just see that in your mind's eye, and this occipital lobe really is that mind's eye. The cerebellum is located at the back of the head below the occipital lobe, and this is used in coordination, fine motor movement, balance, walking, speech articulation. It also stores physical memory. So when they say it's kind of like riding a bike, you never forget, that's your cerebellum. And with music, musicians' abilities really do become those muscle memories. I think this applies to dancers as well. And so you just really never forget. You might get a little rusty, but I don't know if anyone has seen the clip of the woman that had Alzheimer's who used to be a ballerina. They started playing a song from, I believe it was this one of the famous ballets. I can't remember if it was the Nutcracker or what at this moment, but she just started dancing in her wheelchair and just remembered all of those movements from so many years ago. And it's just amazing how music can really create these memories, and those memories stick with us. Now, diving a little bit deeper in the brain, we have an area that's called, we refer to the general area as subcortical structures. This includes the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the amygdala. And these are really, again, kind of deeper memories. In the hippocampus, that's very important for memory. The hypothalamus regulates our body state, such as temperature, appetite, that sleep-wake cycle. The amygdala is involved with emotions such as anger and fear. And so when we have a reaction to music, this part of the brain really lights up, and it really is responsible for those music memories, experiences. Research has shown that music can increase neuron generation in this area, which helps improve memory. And music, again, can cause heart rate and blood pressure to go down. So really affecting those internal body states. So moving on to think about how music really does impact us across our entire life. I wanted to talk a little bit about children first, and a study that was conducted at the University of Southern California's Brain and Creativity Institute. What they found was that musical experiences in childhood actually accelerate brain development, particularly with language and reading. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But really, we're thinking about music as brain plasticity. So, your brain's ability to adapt, develop, grow new neural connections, those are all emphasized by music. And that, can help impact children as they grow, but it can also help restore function in adults. And so we're going to talk about that as well. According to the National Association of Music Merchants, or the NAMM Foundation, learning to play an instrument can improve mathematical learning and increase SAT scores in kids. And children who learned an instrument show better fine motor control, auditory perception, pitch and rhythm discrimination, and melodic contour perception. That translates to improvements in verbal abilities, including verbal recall and reading skills. So music can just be such an enriching thing to really help kids maximize their abilities. And let's dive a little bit deeper. So reading, actually, the way a pre-literate child, or a child who is not yet able to read, processes the ingredients of sound. So the way their brain processes pitch, timing, timbre, can help predict future reading ability. So making sense of sound, or that auditory perception, is one of the most complex things that our brain does, and it happens in milliseconds. And what they found was that the ability to process sounds is a neurological marker for things like autism, dyslexia, and learning delays. So it can help give us a bigger picture and insight on how, these kids process information at the brain level, and maybe how we can help them. Dancing to music obviously can help kids build fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and also help them practice self-expression. There's a huge emotional and social development component to music. It really helps to set a mood. So with kids, and I would say with adults as well, quiet, soothing music can definitely help calm and relax, while lively music can really pump them up. My daughter in particular just loves to have those like Disney songs pumping every morning to get her ready to go for the day. And it just sets the tone, for the entire day. And music and movement rather are social activities. And whether you are part of a band, you're going to a concert, you're listening to your favorite song in your car with your friends, it just helps children and all people really feel part of a group, part of a community. So what can we do as parents and care providers to help nurture children and really foster that love of music? And it really begins in infancy. So some ideas are to play music for your baby. And I know in years past, it has really been kind of a emphasis on classical music in particular, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of music it is. And so I think, whatever music you like and whatever music your baby responds to should be what you play them. Playing them Mozart or Beethoven is not going to make them a smarter kid. Playing any music is going to really just help foster that brain development. And I have read a few studies as well that, this could even begin in utero. If you play music while a mother is pregnant, a lot of times when the baby is born, they respond more to that music. Singing to your baby or your child, you do not have to be a good singer to make this effective. Their language centers in their brain are being bombarded with words, and the melody will help them remember those words, those patterns, those rhythms. Your brain is able to learn things faster and retain things longer when it's presented as a song, as music. And so, again, you don't have to be Celine Dion. But singing with your child is a wonderful way to help brain development. And anybody, if you say Mary Had a Little Lamb, anybody can sing that, even if you haven't sang it probably in 20, 30, 40 years. And why? Because it's part of that deep brain memory. So these, songs and words really are ingrained. Starting music lessons early. I know, typically kids don't have the opportunity rather to learn a musical instrument in school until about fifth or sixth grade. But really, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds could be exposed and learning as long as it's at their level. And because their brains have so much neuroplasticity, that's a wonderful time to start. And I would take that a step further to really advocate and encourage your child's school, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school to teach music. I get so sad when I see in the news that music programs are being cut because this is such an important, skill. We can increase creativity, coordination, and I think that just really need to advocate to keep music in schools for so many reasons. I have a little fun fact down there. Typically, by the age of 8, our brains do a big neuron dump. So, really, anything that the brain deems as unnecessary, it gets rid of. And so, learning a musical instrument, learning a new language, your brain kind of becomes designed for that learning. And so, I think the earlier you can start, the better. Shifting across the lifespan to adults, studies have shown that older musicians have less age-related reductions in total brain volumes compared to those that are non-musicians. Listening to or making music increases blood flow to the brain regions that generate and control emotions. And evidence suggests that listening to music may help brain cells process information more efficiently and may facilitate the brain's ability to adapt. There's also been some pretty amazing research that shows that listening to music can decrease pain. And it does this twofold. So music not only distracts us, so it gives us something to think about besides the pain, but it also increases the production of dopamine, which is a natural pain reliever. Just a pretty interesting survey that was conducted by the AARP a few years ago. The people on the survey that reported listening to music had higher scores for mental well-being and reduced levels of anxiety and depression. Of respondents who go to musical performances regularly, 69% rated their brain health as excellent or very good, compared to 58% for those who did not, who had gone in the past, and 52% for those who had never attended a musical performance. Of those who reported often being exposed to music as a child, 68% rated their ability to learn new things as excellent or very good, compared to just 50% of those who were not exposed to music. Active musical engagement, including those over the age of 50, was associated with higher rates of happiness and good cognitive function. And adults with no early musical exposure, but who are currently engaging in some kinds of music appreciation, showed above average mental well-being scores. So I think that last point especially just highlights that it's never too late. It's never too late to, incorporate music into your lifestyle. It's never too late to start kind of stimulating your brain this way. And actually, just want to go back one before we move on. There were a lot of studies that were done on patients who had sustained strokes and brain injuries. And the ones who listened to music every day showed increased gains in verbal memory and cognition as compared to those who listened to either audiobooks or didn't listen to anything. So just being exposed to words without music, not as helpful. If you incorporate that music in, those patients 2 months after their stroke showed improvements in their language function, which I think is amazing. So as adults, what can we do? How do we start to incorporate music more into our lifestyles? So first and foremost, listen to music. It doesn't matter what kind of music, as I said before. What they have found, actually, if you have a loved one with dementia, is that they respond best and their brain lights up most to the music that they grew up listening to. So a familiar music will trigger an emotional response in the brain that is, very closely tied to our memory. And so whatever music that you were, growing up with can help there. On the flip side, if you want to, stimulate your brain and kind of expose it to new things, which is always good for our brain to be exposed to new and different things, listen to music that you're not familiar with. So if you grew up listening to, classical music, maybe you take some time and listen to some polka music or maybe some salsa music. Something that is different is definitely going to give your brain more of a workout because you're processing those different sound patterns. Physical activity is very good for our brains. Anything that is good for your heart in general is going to be good for your brain. So learning a new dance, movement can help with coordination, balance, learning, new dance steps can definitely be a brain workout when you're following those directions and you're trying to remember what comes next. And that can be done, on your own, in your home. It can be done in a chair if you just want to move your legs and your arms. It can be done in a group setting. So just incorporating music and movement into your life, I think will be even more beneficial. As I said, it's never too old. If you've always wanted to learn how to play the piano, the best time was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. So learning a musical instrument can help improve hand-eye coordination, rhythm, timing. It's really good for your working memory because, you are having to remember those patterns and keys, the notes, learning how to read music if you've never read music. Can be, a very cognitively stimulating task. Memorizing song lyrics will help auditory processing, attention, memory. So, if you're not up on the music of today, maybe, turn on the radio and see if you can learn something new. Listening, again, like I said earlier, to maybe what your kids or grandkids listen to might jumpstart your creativity and kind of expose you to something new, as I said. Reaching for familiar music will definitely help you remember memories from a long time ago. So a lot of times that reminiscent therapy we use in therapy, and we'll talk a little bit more about therapy here in just a few minutes, that is something that we can use with our patients with dementia to really kind of bring them back and light their brain up. A lot of times it is amazing how you might have a patient who is completely nonverbal. They've stopped talking, but you turn on a song that they remember and all of a sudden they're singing and it's beautiful and amazing. And I think it just shows the power of music that really does transcend a lot of, just that surface level stuff. So again, we do try, at least I try to incorporate music into therapy because it can be very powerful. And I'm talking about specifically speech therapy here because that's my profession. There are people who are trained musical therapists, and it is a really, really cool profession. I didn't know about it when I was going through my training, but I think if I had, I might have taken a different pathway. I don't know. I do love what I do though. And I think that any job, you can definitely incorporate music. Whether you're working with patients, whether you're a teacher and you want to stimulate your students, whether you're an office worker and you want to boost morale or productivity, I think you can find really creative ways to incorporate music in. But in speech therapy, a lot of times with pediatrics, we can incorporate music to make things more fun and interesting and keep them engaged. A lot of times with kids' speech therapy can be pretty repetitive. So trying to make it new and interesting is always a challenge. We can foster language development by learning or practicing new words in songs. Again, going back to if there are words in the song, we're going to remember those words a lot better when it's set to music. You can build routines and socialization opportunities with music with children with autism. A lot of times I'll sing the same song at the end and the beginning of each session, and that's, the cue for the kiddo, oh, we're ready to start, or, oh, it's time to go home. And that can really help with those transitions. Music can also help build fluency for kids who stutter. A lot of times if they're singing, they're a lot more fluent than if they're just talking. With adults, we can use, as I was mentioning, music with patients with dementia to help bring back memories, improve engagement. There is something called vibroacoustic therapy for Parkinson's, and I don't know a lot about this, but if you're interested, I would highly recommend that you look it up. And, music really sound is just a bunch of vibrations. And so what they found was with Parkinson's patients, this vibroacoustic therapy can lead to decreased body stiffness, reduced tremors, and longer strides when walking. Music can be used to help with memory processes, mental stimulation, and stress reduction, which ultimately will all increase outcomes of therapy. There was an article, and this one's a little, not as recent. It was back in 2020, but the Alzheimer's Association website, alz.org, that I have listed there. There's a lot of awesome things that they've been doing with music. This particular article is for caregivers, and I would highly recommend, if you are a caregiver, to look it up. It talks a lot about Glenn Campbell and music and how it impacted his care. And they have in the past, and I was trying to see if they are currently doing it, but I wasn't able to get a response in time for this presentation, actually loaned out iPods for patients to allow them to listen to music if they didn't have it at home. So they just have a lot of awesome resources. And I think that, their website is just a wealth of knowledge. So if you are on their website and you search music, this is just one of many articles that you will come up on. And I think they will give you some really, really great ideas. So to kind of recap our session today, music activates our entire brain. Playing or listening to music is a total brain workout. And I think we illustrated that with each of the different lobes of the brain and hemispheres, both left and right. Music can improve our physical and emotional health, and it is important across the lifespan in improving several cognitive functions. Music can be used in therapy to improve patient outcomes and engagement. And I would say that incorporating music in your daily life, starting now if you aren't already, will really be a great step in keeping your brain young and healthy. So with that, I will open it up to questions. I really do appreciate everyone tuning in. And if you think of something later, or you have more questions about therapy or about our education programs, you can feel free to email me as well.
Stephanie, you mentioned the memory bit with music, and I don't know, especially TikTok nowadays, there'll be a song that comes on with a video and it will be memory unlocked for me.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just so profound, and then it brings back all those memories at such a visceral feeling.
Absolutely. Yep.
Is there been, I'm sure there has, any studies about different types of music and different outcomes based off different types?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I think we've learned recently, so like I mentioned before, we went through the whole baby Einstein era where it was supposedly if you played classical music for your baby, they would be smarter. And so a lot of those, videos would have Mozart or Beethoven playing in the background. But really what they've shown is that it doesn't matter what kind of music. I would say it depends on your goal. So if your goal is to trigger memories and nostalgia and maybe that sense of, peace and happiness, maybe turning to music that you're familiar with and that, brings back those memories from your childhood or your upbringing would be most effective. If your goal is to learn something new and challenge your brain and stimulate your brain, listening to music that is different, that you're not familiar with, would be kind of the way to go.
Does anybody have any questions for Stephanie? She always leaves us with her email, very accessible. So please feel free to give her a shout. We also have many other classes that will be coming up. So be looking for, Stephanie's on our rotation for sure. We always use and abuse her with her brain knowledge. But check northkansascityhospital.org/class, which is going to offer up a bunch of different activities and events that we have coming up. So I do appreciate you guys tuning in. You will get a recording, a link to YouTube that will have this recording on it. So be watching for that. And again, we want to thank you, Stephanie, for presenting. Always a wealth of knowledge.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.